rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Welcome to this edition, the Thursday's edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I'm glad that you could join us today. This is your daily dose of objective truth in a world of lies. I just want to quickly remind you to go to mypillow.com. Take advantage of that deal at mypillow.com on Perkel sheets, a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. All you have to do to get those beautiful, crisp, clean, cool sheets is go to mypillow.com, click on that radio listener square, and then just put in the promo code Carl or give them a call at 800-858-0263. Not only will you be helping out this podcast, but you will also be helping out Mike Lindell, who is a juggernaut when it comes to fighting for patriots, fighting for America, fighting for election integrity, and also providing American jobs. So please, mypillow.com. Radio Listeners Square, just click on the promo code or use the promo code Carl or give them a call at 800-858-0263. A reminder to follow me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever I am on social media. That's Twitter, that's Getter, that's Facebook, that's Truth Social. That's Instagram. Really love to build up there. If you will follow me there, that would be great. And also subscribe to the podcast, SalemPodcastNetwork.com, TheCarlJacksonShow.com, and everywhere where you get your podcast. Okay, so I told you guys that I want to do something that's a little different today. I want to go a little deeper with you today because the fight for America is real. America is a great country. It is an exceptional country. I think it is divine, and we need to fight for this thing. And so there's a lot of headlines out there. There are a lot of stories out there. But, one of the things that I used to do, I started off when I started off talking about politics, it was very much catered to political analysis with a biblical worldview. I used to do a blog by the name of holyslant.com. So I actually started off writing before I got into radio. And I intend to go back to writing. My time has just been so crazy, but I got to stop making excuses and just make it happen. So I am going to make that happen. But I want you to understand something, and it was something that that I believe that God revealed to me, just how divine the Constitution is. I remember going to Washington, D.C., taking a look at the Constitution. I couldn't help but to cry. Because it was like, even though I'm a black man and you consider the history of America, I understood that slavery was universal based on the readings, plenty of things that I had read and history that I had looked into. And I just understood how God knitted this country together. And it was just so fascinating to me, using imperfect people to do so. And so the argument that I want to make today is how the Democrat Party is not a compassionate party. And it used to be more ideological for me, meaning what I used to argue oftentimes was I would take a particular issue that the left was on, and I would debunk it based upon biblical principles, based upon biblical values, based upon biblical scripture. That's what I often did. I think that's why I have such a fascination and a love for Dennis Prager, because even though he's a Jew, I see him doing that, and I have gravitated towards that. I absolutely love that. And that's what I love about our Constitution. Our Constitution is wholly divine, in my opinion, and it never grows old because it deals with human nature. And the only reason the Constitution has been great and as exceptional and successful as it has been, despite what the naysayers say, is because of the Judeo-Christian values that are implemented within the Constitution. I'm here to tell you that the Democrat Party is not a compassionate party. A lot of you have voted Democrat for quite some time, or maybe, or I'm assuming some of you that may be tuning in have voted Democrat. Maybe you're on the fence. Maybe you're tired of inflation and the economy. Maybe you're tired of the bickering and the back and forth. And so you're thinking about giving the Republican Party a chance. But even if you give the Republican Party a chance, I want you to understand why you might be giving the Republican Party a chance in this midterm election. I want you to understand ideas and principles and how democratic principles are not compassionate. And I want to talk about that because a lot of people that vote Democrat do so because they believe that they are compassionate. They believe that Republicans are racist. They believe that Republicans are xenophobe. They don't know the history of the Democrat Party. They don't know that the Democrat Party is the party of the KKK. They don't know that the Democrat Party is the party of Jim Crow. They don't know this stuff. They haven't been told this stuff. When I learned about it, it was so illuminating. I got so frustrated because I went through the California public school system and never heard anything about the history, even of the Republican Party. And I just felt so duped. I felt so duped. And nobody wants to feel duped. No one wants to feel as if they're wrong. I want to start with this. Lisa Booth, she has a podcast, The Truth with Lisa Booth. She was on Fox. She's a Fox News contributor as well. And she had a take the other evening. I forget whose show she was on. But anyway, we're going to play the clip for you. And I'm going to, obviously, we have to stop the clip at certain times just so we don't get in trouble by YouTube and by YouTube, basically, and copyright infringement and all that kind of stuff. So you can watch it on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and also on my Rumble channel. Please subscribe to both. Please subscribe to YouTube. If you hate YouTube, that's fine. Subscribe to Rumble. But if you can subscribe to both, please do so. But anyway, The Carl Jackson Show on rumble.com, The Carl Jackson Show. Make sure you add the word "the" in front on YouTube.com. But Gabe, let's go ahead and play this audio, and then we'll just break it up maybe every 30 seconds or so that we're not in trouble as far as copyright infringement is concerned. But here's Lisa Booth on Fox News talking about Joe Biden and how he thinks it's okay to insult fellow Americans that he's supposed to be the leader of. This guy's supposed to be the leader of all of us. Joe Biden is a despicable human being, but it's absolutely fitting when you consider how the lack of compassion that the Democrat Party has. And I'll prove that to you. Here's Lisa Booth.
Today.
Well, look, I think Joe Biden would love to stir things up because he would love to give the FBI and the DOJ an excuse to further weaponize against Americans and against patriotic Americans. You know, and the guy who is actively trying to imprison his political opponent wants to talk about fascism, right? Unless he's giving an instructional how to
Let's
be a
stop
fascist.
right there for Let's stop right there. She's about to say, unless he's giving instructions, and I'll let you continue hearing the video in just a sec. Unless he's giving instructions of how to be a fascist. This guy's a fascist. Now, he called an entire half of the population in the United States fascist or semi-fascist. Now, I got to be honest with you. It's a little frustrating because I know that the vast majority of his audience, his listening audience, doesn't even know what that means. They don't understand public-private partnerships. They don't understand how the left is in partnership with the mainstream media, in partnership with big tech, in partnership with banks and major corporations in order to force their views, in order to force their value system upon us, in bed with academia. Not just college campuses anymore, but K through 12 in order to force these radical left-wing agendas upon the rest of us. So his audience doesn't understand what fascism is. His audience doesn't understand that they are a party of totalitarianism. They are authoritarians, all right? We are not. We are the party of freedom. Republican Party, we are the party of freedom. Doesn't mean that all Republicans are good. As a matter of fact, I argue all the time how many of them suck. But it is a far better party than the Democrat Party. Let's go on with the audio, please, Kate.
He has no leg to stand on here. But one of the biggest lies that Americans were told is that Joe Biden is a good guy. If you think about it, this is a guy who led two of the most terrible confirmation hearings in American history, where he smeared and slandered Robert Bork and Clarence Thomas when he was the Senate Judiciary Chairman. Mary Ellen Bork, the late Robert Bork's wife, even wrote to the Wall Street Journal heading into the 2020 election, warning us that Joe Biden is a man without a compass who viciously smeared and led a character assassination against her late husband. This guy is a prolific liar. He is a plagiarist, had to drop out of a previous presidential race because of that.
Hold on for just a sec. Okay, so this is very important. What Lisa Booth is mentioning, everything from the attack on good Lord, Bork, what's his name? Bork. God forgive me. I just heard the audio and I forget. But anyway, he slammed Clarence Justice Thomas, put him through the ringer in his nomination or his confirmation hearings. Robert Bork. God forgive me. I don't know how I just forgot that quickly, and I knew that history. But Joe Biden is a despicable human being. Again, he is not a man. Lisa Booth gets this completely right. He's not a man without a compass. But this is exactly why the left wants them. This is exactly why Joe Biden is in the White House, because this is a guy that's desperate for legacy. This is a guy that's willing to do anything and everything to appease the left, because he's never stood for anything. But now he has the opportunity. He's the most powerful man in the world. And so he has an opportunity to shape his legacy. And the left, likewise, are using him in order to advance their agenda. He's the perfect person to do it, because he's not a kind person. He is not a good person. Lisa Booth goes on. Let's continue with the video.
The only reason anyone thinks Joe Biden is a good man is because he has suffered so much loss, and he uses that loss, he uses that grief for political purposes as both a shield and a sword, as we saw when he got 13 service members killed, and then tried to invoke the death of his late son, who died of cancer, who did not die in the line of duty. So one of the biggest lies we were ever told is that Joe Biden is a good man. He is a terrible president, an even worse human being.
You know, the president has really...
Lisa Booth, we can cut it off there. Lisa Booth, just magnificent. That was a great summation of who Joe Biden is. But it isn't just Joe Biden. The Democrat Party is not a good party. The Democrat Party is not a good party. It is not a party of good and decent people. And I'm not talking about the voters, because you've probably voted Democrat and you think you're compassionate. And you may be to family members and friends. But I want you to understand that if you vote for the Democrat Party, you're not a compassionate voter. And you're not compassionate in the major scheme of things, in the big scheme of things. You're doing more damage to the country than good. Your policies do more damage to individuals than good. And I'll explain that shortly. Gabe, if that video is ready to roll, I'll go ahead and play it too. But if not, you just let me know. Okay, so I want to play another video. This is former President Trump speaking in front of the United Nations General Assembly in regards to OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And I'm going to tie all of this together. And once again, my motive today is to prove that the Democrat Party is not a compassionate party. And so you shouldn't be voting for them in the midterms. You shouldn't vote for them in 2024. You shouldn't vote for them at all if you consider yourself a compassionate person. And I'll explain why. Also, quickly shortly here, I'll be getting to polls. Reuters poll, Joe Biden's net approval drops 7 points in 1 week. I want to talk about that briefly because there are a lot of Republicans out there that are concerned that things like abortion are going to bring the Republican Party down and stuff like that. I want you guys to know that you are being sold a bill of goods by the mainstream media, and the left will prove that. And again, we'll prove that the Democrat Party is not a compassionate party. Gabe, go ahead and roll the tape.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers. It has been the...
Hold the tape. If you're... I want you guys, seriously, I'm not saying this to try to sell you on anything. You need to please subscribe to YouTube, The Carl Jackson Show. You need to subscribe to Rumble if you haven't already. I want you to watch this video. The reason that I want you to watch this video is because I want you to see the reactions of Germany at that UN General Assembly meeting, or whatever it's called at the United Nations, because they are laughing at former President Trump. They're laughing at his words. Now, why is this important? Before we roll the tape, I don't think there's much more to the audio. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and finish rolling that audio for me, Gabe, please.
Of expansionist foreign powers. It has been the formal policy of our country since President Monroe.
Okay, so that was Germany is sitting there laughing at Donald Trump, and now all of a sudden I can't find the article. But basically, here's what happened. Okay, here it is. All right, so the General Assembly of Germany, or the German people at the UN General Assembly, are sitting there laughing at Trump when he's talking about oil and fossil fuels, and how basically the Germany and Europe is going to be beholden to dictators like Vladimir Putin if they continue with this green nonsense. And obviously, I'm paraphrasing. And they're sitting there, they're laughing and they're scoffing at him like he's a complete and utter idiot. When we found out in just a few short years that they are the complete and utter idiots for buying into this man-made climate change nonsense, this green life nonsense. And as a result of democratic policies, as a result of left-wing policies, people are going to suffer. Hat tip Breitbart, the European Union now faces up to 10 years of terrible winters of energy insecurity as a result of its green agenda, with many nations in the bloc having gotten themselves addicted to Russian gas in service of climate crazy ideals. So they are making their own people suffer in the name of green energy and in the name of saving the planet, but they're not. They're phonies, they're fakes, they're frauds, because in order to sustain their green energy movement, they had to get fossil fuels from Russia. You see how this works? You see how the scam works? Make your people feel good so that you can invoke control over them by using climate change and stuff like that. Meanwhile, on the down low, or actually not on the down low, everybody knows this is fake, except the people that buy into this green life nonsense crap. The vast majority of people, I think, know that it's a scam. But as a result, people are gonna die this winter in Europe just because they won't be able to heat their places, their homes. It's insane. Nations across the European Union could be facing a future of 5 to 10 years of energy insecurity thanks to its climate crazy energy policy, something that saw many countries within the bloc addict themselves to Russian gas in service of their green agendas. Yet again, fears are already spreading in many countries in Europe and beyond in regards to the possibility of public unrest as a result of expected financial hardship this coming winter, with government bigwigs in France and Germany expressing concern that citizens could react poorly to what has been termed by the President Emmanuel Macron as the end of abundance. Left-wing policies, democratic policies, not just in the United States, but abroad, they are not compassionate. They are not compassionate because they always cause pain and suffering, and unnecessarily so. Because the Democrat Party, they don't respect the individual. They don't respect individual worth. God has created every single one of us for a purpose, and the Democrat Party doesn't care about that. They don't care about the individual. All they care about is power, and all they care about is their agenda going forward. That's all they care about. There's another story that I wanted to dive deeply into today, but I won't get into. I just decided to change course at the last minute, but I at least want to share the headline with you. I want to prove to you that Democrats don't care about the individual. They don't care about your value, your worth, your belief system. They don't care. Ricard versus USD, 475 Geary County Schools, school board members. This is from ADF Media Alliance Defending Freedom. Let me just give you a quick summary. In a victory for free speech at public schools, Fort Riley Middle School officials have agreed, this is in Kansas City, Kansas, agreed to pay $95,000 in damages and attorney fees for violating a math teacher's First Amendment rights when they reprimanded and suspended her for addressing a student by the student's legal and enrolled name and forced her to conceal the student's social transition from the student's parents. So again, let me just a few things that I want to bring out here real quickly. So this lady is a math teacher. She's supposed to be teaching math. Instead, she's having to participate in a lie while the school is forcing her to adopt their values. The lady was totally against their value system and pretending like a little boy could be a little girl, which is biologically and scientifically impossible no matter what you do. And the school was working to conceal this from parents, even going so far as to, if there were parent-teachers meetings, the teacher had to pretend as if they weren't using this name as this child in middle school was transitioning. Do you remember yourselves at 12, 13 years old? Were you mature enough at that age to make life-changing decisions? Of course you weren't. But I want you to understand the Democrat Party and the left, they are not compassionate people. They're not compassionate people. There's no doubt in my mind that this young child that is suffering with abusive people that are supposed to look out for your children, right? But they're abusing this child. There's no doubt that this child will be more susceptible to anxiety, depression, and even suicide. Why? Because the Democrat Party is not a compassionate party. This lady, this teacher, was forced not to teach her students necessarily about math, but she had to get in on the gravy train of social justice and trans rights and all that kind of stuff, I guess, to maintain her job. But she eventually fought back. She eventually fought back, thank God. And now she's being rewarded. I wish she were rewarded $95 million and they fired everybody involved, frankly, but that would probably close down the entire district of schools in Kansas City, Kansas. But notice where the left is going to. They're going to these places that used to be wholesome, middle America, and they're trying to transform these people that love America, that believe in America outside of the big cities. So I want you to understand what's happening. Again, the Democrat Party is not a compassionate party. I got some good news for you. I'm going to share this soon. This Reuters poll, Joe Biden is down. Joe Biden is down 7 points. He's a drag on the Democrat Party, thank God. But I want to talk to you about compassion and calculated compassion as the founders saw it. And it's really, really, really good stuff. There's a book that I use as a reference book. You guys have probably seen me. I've got notes all up in this piece. You guys have probably seen or heard me reference it before on the Salem News Channel or when I'm sitting in for some of the national hosts, but I absolutely love it. It does a great job of breaking down the principles that the founding fathers embodied in order to build this great nation that we call America. And I want to talk to you about compassion. I want to talk to you about compassion. You know, as a Christian, I'm not a perfect. I'm so far from perfect. It's not even funny. I mess up all the time. I wish I could be nicer. I wish I could be better. I'm just not perfect. But I'm so happy that I serve a compassionate God that is willing to meet me where I am, forgive me of my sin, and help coach me as I read his word to become better, to become closer to him and to become a better person. That's not what the Democrat Party does. They totally disembody what it means to be compassionate. So again, I know this is a little different today, but I want to talk to you about what the founders considered compassion and calculated compassion. And it's stuff that'll resonate with you and I because it deals with human nature. Let me just read a part of this real quickly. How the founders had a deep concern for the poor and needy. They wanted to make the whole nation prosperous, but they wanted to make sure that there was a still deep concern for the poor and needy because they cared about that. It says here, as mentioned earlier, disciples of the collectivist left and the founders, and understand that I'm starting in a place. It talks about de Tocqueville, Samuel Adams, but just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into all of this and despotic governments of the past. But the founders, again, it says here, as mentioned earlier, disciples of the collectivist left in the founders' day, as well as our own, have insisted that compassion for the poor requires that the federal government become involved in taking from the haves and giving to the have-nots. Benjamin Franklin, just consider this student loan debt forgiveness, if in fact it does occur. I believe that it is unconstitutional. And so hopefully that the Supreme Court will strike that down. The president doesn't have the power of the purse, but nonetheless, he would be taking, if indeed this did go through, he would be taking for people that already paid off their debt or people that never went to college simply because they didn't want to or they couldn't afford it, and forcing them to pay for people that are eventually going to make more money than them. It's absolute nonsense. That isn't compassion. That isn't compassion for the people that worked hard to pay off their own debt as they should have. And it's not compassion for the people that are poor that said, man, we can't afford to go to college, so we're going to work our butts off and we're going to earn a living, maybe doing menial labor, maybe doing a trade of some sort. Who knows? But it's wrong. It's immoral. It's wrong and it's immoral. Benjamin Franklin had been one of the have-nots, and after living several years in England, where he saw government welfare programs in operation, he had considerable to say about these public charities of counterproductive compassion. Franklin wrote a whole essay on the subject and told one of his friends, and I quote, "I have long been of your opinion that your legal provision for the poor in England is a very great evil." So let me read that again. I have long been of your opinion that your legal provision for the poor in England is a very great evil. operating as it does to the encouragement of idleness, laziness, basically. We have followed your example and begin now to see our error, and I hope shall reform it, he writes. So let's talk about counterproductive compassion. Let's talk about compassion that isn't compassion. If you have a family member, have you ever seen, man, I forget the name of the show. Gabe, maybe you can help me out. I used to watch it. Oftentimes it was always with a family member that had a drug addiction of some sort. They would go to rehabilitation. Maybe some would, it would be miraculous. Some would turn around. Most, it seemed, would not. But it was one of these on one of these channels, A&E or Discovery or one of the channels like that. But I used to watch it, and oftentimes family members would try to be compassionate. And listen, I could be guilty of this too. We all are to some degree. But they would often sometimes take family members to get the drugs, even though they wanted to get them off or give them money or so on, etc. And it would hurt the person. It wouldn't help the person. It would hurt the person. So Franklin talked about this. A survey of Franklin's views on counterproductive compassion might be summarized as follows. The 5,000-year leap writes, compassion which gives a drunk the means to increase his drunkenness is counterproductive, right? So none of us would give a drunk a drink. Well, some would. But if you do, that's not compassionate, right? Because you realize that what you're doing is hurting that person in the long term. You may be satisfying their thirst for alcohol in the immediate future, or making them happy, or perhaps even getting them off your back. But in the long term, you know that the alcohol is going to cause great damage to them, right? You completely get that. So another one, compassion which breeds debilitating dependency and weakness is counterproductive. Guys, if you've been around the hood, if you've grown up in the hood, you've seen those people that are just addicted to welfare, that are on welfare. They're never going to go to, they're not going to go to work. They're just scrimping by enough to be able to pay some bills, meager bills, if that, or maybe they're sharing rent with other people. They're never going to live a life where that they're going to strive to be better in any way, shape, or form. They're not going to strive to be the people that God created them to be or wanted to be, because they've got hooked on this dependence called welfare. It's sad, but it's true. I remember even here in Florida, I was really shocked to see it. I own a small service business, and I can remember going to get a license for something that I needed, a separate license that I needed as part of the business. And I went into this area, and sadly it was predominantly minority, urban, and Black. And it was the middle of the day. And here I am out there hustling to try to make this business happen and getting the paperwork and document that I needed and all this kind of stuff. And I go around this one corner where there's probably 6 or 7 Black men, able-bodied, anywhere from probably, I don't know, 30s to olders, to probably well into their 50s, and some even in their 60s, just sitting there in the middle of the day playing cards. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here? And it just hit me. You know what? I guarantee you these guys get a welfare check. For whatever reason, these guys get a welfare check. Now, that was probably, that was probably over, 10, 15 years ago, maybe even. But I was sitting there thinking, man, these guys are getting a welfare check. They're not working because they don't feel like they need to. They'll just survive for the day. They'll be able to pay, have enough money to, pay room and board somewhere, to go out, one night a week or something like that. And then they'll just chill on the stoop. But that's not compassion. That's not compassion, because these guys could probably be, if they were challenged, they could probably be great workers. They could probably be great, who knows, great husbands, great fathers if they were challenged. If they were put in a position to be challenged. And then they wouldn't be sitting on the stoop, and then they would be productive, and then they would have, they would probably have a wife and maybe kids, and these people would become productive members of society. But instead, no, that's not what the left does. Compassion, here's another one. Compassion, which blunts the desire or necessity to work for a living, is counterproductive. And I've already discussed that some with the last thing that I that I mentioned, but also consider all of this money that went out during the COVID lockdowns. Middle class people were given welfare checks that had never gotten welfare checks before, and they were able to live lifestyles where they're like, oh man, this feels good. I'm getting all of this money from the federal government, which by the way, they're paying for. They don't even realize that, but they're getting these checks from the federal government, and in some cases state governments as well. And so they're like, wow, you know what? This feels really good. You mean I don't have to go to work, and I can make this money, and I can go out and do whatever I want to do during the day. This is pretty cool. But that isn't compassionate, because eventually that's going to come to an end. And not only that, consider the shipping supply shortages we have right here in the United States, because people that are able-bodied refuse to go to work. 11 million job openings, people refuse to go to work, or they switch jobs so quickly because, man, that's not compassionate. Here's another one. Compassion, which smothers the instinct to strive and excel, is counterproductive. Is it when you know someone can be a better version of them, but you have government programs and policies often implemented by the left that prevent people from striving to be better, to be greater? Is that kind? When you're telling a person, listen, this is all you're going to be, this is all you can be, instead of challenging them to live up to their potential, is that kind? Of course it isn't. But this is what the Democrat Party wants you to believe, that giving out handouts is kind. Do you think Joe Biden is kind, denigrating half of the population, turning families against each other, forcing jabs on people where people are forced to either comply or walk away from their source of living that feeds their family and puts food on the table? Is that compassionate? Of course it's not. Let me give you some examples of compassion, or calculated compassion, as the founders saw it. Do not help the needy completely. Merely help them to help themselves. There was a period of time where we had to go on welfare, a couple of times during my life, where we were in dire straits financially. I assume my father came to us. He sat myself, my brothers down. I'm sure he told my sister as well. And he was like, hey, listen, guys, we need to go on welfare for a short period of time. But as soon as I can get off of it, we're going to get off of it. And this happened while my mom was alive. My mom passed away when I was 11. So this happened, I believe, once or so that I remember anyway. Before she passed, it happened once or twice after she passed, because things just went to complete hell after that, to be frank. And it was, my dad had this level of shame. Like, you guys, I don't want to be here, but I have no choice right now. And as soon as I get off of it, I'm going to let you know. And so we were on welfare. I can't recall how long, but I do recall him calling us back into his room to sit us all down on the bed and let us know that we were no longer on welfare, that things had picked up with his business and work, and so that we were going to get off of welfare. And he made it a point to share that with us, which when I think back on that, I'm like, man, that's cool. So I don't mind these entitlement programs when they help people get off their feet, but it shouldn't be a lounging chair, shouldn't be a couch. And that's exactly where we are. Another one, give the poor satisfaction of earned achievement instead of rewarding them without achievement. Remember the trophy generation? I grew up in the trophy generation. Give everybody a trophy. I'm Generation X. Give everybody a trophy. I realized that wasn't right then. It was weird. I remember thinking at the time, I can't remember what happened, but I ran track at the time. And I remember hearing someone talk about, I think it was another track event, and someone commentating how this person deserves a trophy too. They didn't place, but they deserve a trophy. And I'm sitting there thinking, why? I was never the fastest, quickest, most athletic person, but I would work hard to try to get, there were times in my age group when I would get first place. There were times when it was second or third, maybe sometimes in a relay, it'd be second or third, every once in a while first. But it was like, man, you worked hard to get that. And when you won, you felt like you really achieved something. You felt like all of your hard work had paid off. Well, getting rid of earned achievement totally destroys that. People stop looking to earn achievement, and that's never good for a society. That'll cause a society to die. That's why this book is called The 5,000-Year Leap. That's what socialism does. That's what communism does. It kills creativity. It kills the incentive to create, to invent, to strive. And that's why I can't stand the left. That's why I can't stand the Democrat Party as it exists today. Another one, allow the poor to climb the appreciation ladder from tents to cabins, cabins to cottages, cottages to comfortable houses. This is why I love that we had a free market system. Hopefully we'll get back to a capitalist system where it doesn't matter. It's not a caste system, right? You may be in the lower class, you may be in the middle class, you may be rich. But as long as you're in America and as long as you embrace Americanism, you can excel. You can go from being the poorest of the poor and you can become wealthy. If you learn to save your money, if you learn to not overspend, if you invest, I don't care if you make $10 an hour. If you learn to make sure you don't spend more than you make, save a little bit, invest a little bit, you will do okay in the United States. Now, I'm not encouraging that. I want you to go for the gusto. I want you to save even more. I want you to invest even more. I want you to go get 2 or 3 jobs so you make sure you're not, scraping by. You got to work hard. You got to work hard. But what I love about America is it isn't a caste system, meaning you're not in India. You're not in places like that exist around the world, that exist in the Middle East, where wherever class system you're born into, that's where you stay. That's not true in America. That's not true in America. And that's why I begrudge all the people that just constantly denigrate America and this great nation. Here's another one. Where emergency help is provided, do not prolong it to the point where it becomes habitual. Well, we've already talked about that with welfare. Look at what's happened again with these lockdowns and people getting free money. And look at the problems that we're having now. Look at the problems that this country is having now. Where emergency help is provided, do not prolong it to the point where it becomes habitual. Guys, we gotta get people back to work. That's compassionate. Compassion is better for everybody. Getting people back to work is better for everyone. People have the dignity of work. Our supply chain issues, will cease for the most part. I think people feel better at work. I've noticed people seem to be more intense. I had an encounter with a person the other day where I'm like, man, this world is just getting crazy. People are going insane. And I do attribute a lot of that to the lockdowns and all the stress that were upon people and people like Joe Biden, who is a despicable human being that is, instead of talking about policy issues, because the left can't win, Democrats can't win if they talk about policy. So instead of talking about policy issues, he's branding an entire half of the country as semi-fascist to people who don't even know what that means. It's insane. Also, it says, strictly enforce the scale of fixed responsibility. The first and foremost level of responsibility is with the individual himself. All right. The second level is the family. Then the second level is the family, then the church, next the community, finally the county, and in a disaster or emergency, the state, or let's say the federal government. All right. So the fixed responsibility, first responsibility to improve yourself relies with yourself. All right. If you need some help, the second level is the family. This is why God created family. This is why family is the building block of society. Family is the best training ground to get the coaching that you need, how to behave in civil society, how to grow up with morals and ethics and work hard. All of that training comes within the household. That's why the left is so desperate to destroy the family. You destroy the family, you can usher in communism. That's exactly what they want to do, because big government becomes big daddy, big mama. You get it? That's exactly what the left wants to do. Then the church. If you, the church, it's amazing how many church organizations or non-governmental organizations happen to be a part of churches or religions. It's fascinating to me. It's almost as if the church has accepted, you know what, big government is good, big government is God, and so we're going to allow big government to provide rather than a church. But this is the mentality, even amongst people that tend to be evangelical Christians, Catholics, you name it. Mormons seem to do a better job of this, of understanding that help comes from within the church, not from government. Sadly, Christians who should be leading that fight, evangelical Christians, in my opinion, are not. And that's very, very important. Then next is the community. So you look for fixed responsibility within the community, local elections. That's very important. Republicans, conservatives, we have been horrible at this. Barack Obama got it. He came in, said, he's a community organizer. And we all laughed. What the heck is a community? Well, now we know. Now we know local elections matter. These people have filled up schools and K through 12, universities, all these institutions with local activists that have turned this country away from the Constitution and further left. It says, finally, the county and in a disaster or emergency, the state, under no circumstances is the federal government to become involved in public welfare. The founders felt it would corrupt the government and also the poor. Isn't that funny? Also the poor. We know that it would corrupt the government, but how does it corrupt the poor? Well, all of the things that we talked about. The counterproductivism of the poor. No constitutional authority exists for the federal government to participate in charity over welfare. This is just good stuff. This is good stuff, and we have to learn how to go deeper. Now, I do have some good news for you, because the left is trying to tell you that the polls, and I was even concerned about them, that the polls are not looking as good for Republicans. And listen, I don't think we could ever sit on our laurels. I don't think that we should ever take the polling lightly. I don't think we should take elections lightly. The only way that we're going to maintain freedom in the United States of America is to fight for it at the ballot box. Hat tip, Breitbart. Reuters poll, Joe Biden's net approval dropped 7 points in 1 week. Hallelujah. So Joe Biden's net approval rating dropped a full 7 points in 1 week. This according to Reuters Ipsos poll released on Tuesday. Only 38% approved of Biden this week, while 58% disapproved, for a net approval rating of negative 20. Last week, 41% of people approved of Biden and 54% disapproved, for a net approval rating of negative 13. All right, so the poll sampled 1,005 Americans with a 4-point margin of error. Those sampled included 449 Democrats and 357 Republicans within that 1,005. And this is the bad sign for Democrats leading into the midterms, and they know it. Nothing they have done has worked. And I think Joe Biden shot himself, and the Democrat Party have really shot themselves in the foot. They passed this Inflation Reduction Act, and then he comes out like a moron. Inflation reduction, which we know, spending money, putting more money on a government credit card, isn't going to decrease inflation. It's going to increase inflation. It's going to be even more dollars circulating into the economy, chasing fewer and fewer items. So, of course, anyone with a modicum of common sense when it comes to the economy understands that the Inflation Reduction Act was never meant to reduce inflation. It was meant to usher in the green energy, Green New Deal, so we can look like Germany in a few years, begging for oil from our enemies that want to take us down. The German leaders are complete idiots. They were sitting there mocking and laughing at Trump. Please make sure you subscribe to this podcast. I want you to see this online, just their little sniveling laughter. And now these little punks in Germany the people in Germany are going to suffer because they had idiots as leaders that bought into this green energy nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. How conceited and cocky do you have to be to believe that there were plenty of men and women that came before you? The earth has always warmed. The earth has always cooled, but you little peon could do something to change it. Give me a freaking break. You can make things run as cleanly as possible. And I believe we have an obligation to do that. I do believe that we have an obligation to be wise stewards of this earth while we're on it. But don't sit there and believe that you're going to change the freaking climate. That's so asinine. I can't believe that people buy into it. But people buy into it because people need God. Girl, what do you mean, people? People need God. People need to feel moral. People need to feel virtuous. People need to worship something. So if they don't worship God, they're going to find something to worship. So people worship climate change. That's what's happening. That's all that's happening. But getting back to this, The media has been hyping this, listen, Democrats they have these renewed hopes after all of these, legislative actions that they're passing. Of course, the latest with the student loan debt forgiveness not being a legislative action. And again, I hope that it winds up in the Supreme Court. Biden doesn't have the authority under the Constitution to forgive student loans. And by the way, it'd be nice if you Republicans would say, you know what, one of the things that we're going to do so that Americans aren't on the hook anymore is we're going to make sure that the federal government isn't the sole lender when it comes to college student loans. We're going to make sure that never happens, because people that can't afford to go to college shouldn't be on the hook for people that decided and made a choice to go to college, even if they couldn't afford it. So they took out a loan to do so. And nor should the people that paid off, worked and scrimped and worked hard to pay off their college loan debt be forced to pay for somebody that comes behind them. That makes no sense. Now, here's what the Republican Party has to do. We have to retake the Senate. We have to focus on Wisconsin, Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and we need one additional state. That could be Arizona, that could be Nevada, that could be Georgia. I'm not saying that this is an easy climb, but I think given these polls now, things are, listen, you got Blake Masters is rising. You got Herschel Walker, who has just overtaken Raphael Warnock in the polls. And again, we can't sit on our laurels, but I want you to understand we have a fighting chance. If everybody gets out there, we have a fighting chance. I want you to hear this, though. The poll also found that Joe Biden's recessive economy is the number one issue for both Republicans and Democrats. Oh, still? Because we were being told it was other things. Throughout Biden's presidency, the nation's economy has been rocked by 40-year high inflation, record high gas prices. This is still impacting people. Biden's plan to resolve the crisis has been to spend massive amounts of money to prevent global warming. So instead of focusing on high inflation, instead of focusing on high gas prices, the Biden administration decided to pass a Green New Deal plan known as the Inflation Reduction Act. And when people are sitting at home and they're like, God, it costs so much. I went to the store the other day. I bought nothing and walked out paying $88. And I'm sitting there thinking, how the heck is this possible? Inflation. Our dollar is worth much less thanks to Biden and thanks to the Democrats that are not compassionate. If they were compassionate, they would make sure the dollar was strong so you don't have to work harder and still afford less. The Democrats are not a compassionate people. Now, I want to talk about a couple of issues because Republicans and conservatives will talk about this. Now, I admit Republicans suck at messaging. They just do. Hopefully, we're getting better. I see Blake Masters are putting out some videos that, man, thank God. I feel like the new young up-and-comers are getting much better at messaging. We have to be willing to take on cultural issues as well as economic issues and put that little emotional spin into it, and not spin. It's just truth. Man, when you're paying higher prices for food and food and shelter and the basic necessities of life, you can't enjoy life. And Republicans need to talk about this. They need to grip people at the heart, but also use policy. But I'm going to show you where we've been somewhat duped. Among Democrats, about 1 in 8 saw the environment as the top issue, and about 1 in 10 pointed to the end of national abortion rights. What? 1 in 10% are concerned about abortion leading, or 1 out of 10, so 10% are concerned about abortion rights leading into the midterms. That's not what we've been told. That's not what the media is telling us. There's even conservatives. Oh my God. This abortion issue. No. We can talk about the abortion issue. We can have this fight. Abortion is racist. Understand where it comes from. Understand what Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, was trying to do. Get rid of the weeds, people that look like me, people that she thought were inferior. Talk about this stuff. We can win this fight. We can win cultural fights. And we can win rational, logical, economical fights as well. Because all of these issues deal with a felt need. See, the problem that the left has is not 100% or 90% of Americans are out there having abortions. The people that are having abortions, unfortunately, oftentimes, or lower income people that are having abortions, or some people that are just, I don't know, sleeping around, frolicking around, and having abortions. But there's a reason why the vast majority of Planned Parenthood centers are near the hood. The left knows this. The left gets this. But the downfall is most people aren't having abortions. Most people are having their children, and most people even buy into the narrative. And I would challenge, or I believe this is even on the left. Most people even buy into the narrative. Listen, I don't want to stop a woman from having an abortion, but I'm not for abortion. So it's not going to be an important issue for them at the ballot box. So we don't have to be scared to be pro-life. We can embrace it, and we should embrace it. Just explain why. We love people. We love individuals. The left doesn't. We're compassionate. We're compassionate. We think that a woman that has abortion is going to go on to possibly have physical issues, possibly have emotional issues that she'll have to deal with. We believe that every life is precious. We believe that every life was created by God. Man, we should love life. Don't you love life? We can come at it from a different perspective, but don't run away from it. These are fights that we need to have. Crime and illegal immigration have soared under Joe Biden. These are other major issues that people are still really concerned about. So this isn't good news for Democrats. Now, listen, we still got a long ways to go before the November 8th election. But I want you to take comfort that we're making grounds. Those of us that love America, more people are starting to realize, just as you did, and just as you do, that the Democrat Party and their policies are not compassionate. The Democrat Party is the party of slavery. The Democrat Party is the party of the KKK. The Democrat Party is the party of perpetual poverty. The Democrat Party is the party of hate. The Democrat Party is the party of divisiveness. That's who the Democrat Party is. They are not compassionate. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, I want to remind you to support my sponsor, MyPillow, Mike Lindell at MyPillow. Right now, those sheets, Perkel sheets, you get a queen set. Normally it sells for $89.98, but you use my promo code Carl. Just go to mypillow.com, use that promo code Carl, click on the radio listener square, CARL, and you get those same sheets for $39.98. Now, that applies to any, not that price, but that deal applies to any size, any color you want with the Perkel sheets. Again, mypillow.com. Click on the radio listener square, use the promo code Carl, or you can give them a call, 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263. And please subscribe to the podcast everywhere where you get your podcast. We can be found, The Carl Jackson Show. But particularly for the videos today, I'm asking you to please subscribe to YouTube, Rumble. I would really love to build those channels up, but I want you to see these Germans that are laughing and scoffing at Donald Trump. And now these are the same feckless leaders in Germany that have put their nations on the brink, beholden to a dictator by the name of Vladimir Putin. So please, please, please subscribe. Subscribe to YouTube, subscribe to Rumble, subscribe to anywhere where you find podcasts, and follow me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. Until next time, guys, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.